So in this video we're going to look at how the House of Lords has been reformed over the last 100 years. We're going to touch on briefly the Parliament Acts, which we've already mentioned in a previous video, and then we're going to talk about the House of Lords Act and then the Royal Commission. So an introduction to this topic, as was noted previously, the preamble to the Parliament Act 1911 states that its drafters ultimately intended to substitute the House of Lords as it at present exists a second chamber constituted on a popular instead of hereditary basis. Okay, that's very fancy talk for suggesting that they wanted the House of Lords to become subordinate to the House of Commons. In the years since the Parliament Act, reform of the House of Lords has occupied various positions on the political agendas and of successive governments. The Labour governments of Tony Blair and Gordon Brown succeeded in carrying through many constitutional reforms of note. So we have, I think, talked about the House of Lords Act in the constitutional reform video. However, this is going to be a little bit more specific. So the House of Lords Act of 1999 was passed by the Labour government, and it reduced the number of hereditary peers in the second chamber to 92. It also established an appointments commission responsible for making recommendations to the Prime Minister regarding the appointment of life peers. So this is really a way of taking away power from the hereditary peers within the House of Lords. And it also should be noted that there will always be, under this piece of legislation, there will always be 92 hereditary peers. If one family dies out, for example, then there will be a appointments commission to start to look at appointing another family for hereditary peerage. Okay? So the Royal Commission is another reform that we have seen for the House of Lords, and Labour governments had also established a Royal Commission to look into the matter under the chairmanship of Lord Wakeham. So its report, A House for the Future, it was called, was published in January of 2000, and it made a number of recommendations, including that a reformed second chamber should act as a constitutional long stop, ensuring that changes are not made to the Constitution without full and open debate and an awareness of the consequences. And it should also be authoritative, okay? But that its authority should not be such as to challenge the ultimate democratic authority of the House of Commons. So it's saying really that the House of Lords should have authority in legislation. However, this shouldn't be a challenge to the authority of the House of Commons, because the House of Commons is still the democratic authority. It should also be broadly representative of British society as a whole. So this is a commission of how to make to bring the House of Lords out of the 18th century and bring it into the modern day era. Okay, so they want the House of Lords to still remain as a way to ensure that there is an open debate for legislation before it is passed. They also agree that it should be able to wield authority, but not so much authority as to challenge the House of Commons, of course, because the House of Commons is the democratic authority of Parliament, and it should also reflect British society. Okay? There were also parliamentary debates on matters such as a partly elected or partly appointed second chamber. It was noteworthy that whilst the House of Commons voted in favour of a fully elected and a 80-20 split in the second chamber, the only reform option to secure a majority in the House of Lords was a fully appointed House of Lords. So this is really interesting. The House of Commons did vote in favour of either fully electing the House of Lords or having it so a certain percentage of it was elected and there was a percentage that was appointed. However, neither of these came through the House of Lords. A bill which provided for a mainly elected second chamber passed its second reading by a vote of 462 to 124. So you can see there is a huge a huge majority in favour of reforming the House of Lords and to make it become an elected chamber. It was dropped, however, when it became apparent to the government that it would not be able to get accompanying programme motion passed, which would have determined the timetable for the bill's passage. So there are a number of little reasons why this didn't actually pass through and it was actually dropped. But with that being said, if there was a motivation, the motivation for reforming today, or maybe even after the Brexit negotiations, you would probably see the House of Lords reformed to a more of an elected body. Okay, so the House of Lords has had it's still very controversial. We still see that there are some areas that need to be reformed. The House of Lords Act and the Royal Commission have done a lot in the recent 10 years to make these reforms, but we're going to see more reforms, I'm assuming, in the future.